Hi there. Oh, welcome to Tech Talk Weekly. I'm Bob from Creation Station. This is our weekly show where we give you probably far too many topics to talk about in only 20 minutes, but we're going to push the limits today. If there's a story you want us to see featured, always reach out. Creation Station at Broward.org. Today, Miss Aaliyah, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Oh man, normally I'd be like, "Hey, life is great. Life is really good." Some of the stories today are pretty deep. I mean, we've got 3 stories, folks, that I would be like, "Okay, this is one story that we can cover for the whole show." We got 3 of them today, so I'm
Yep.
going to tell you, you have to hit the links. I'm going to put them into the show notes for you right now. So in case you're watching it live, you can read along. But if you're not watching live, you still have the show notes for you to go follow these articles. So, Miss Aaliyah, did you watch our Creation Station Monthly last month in April?
I did not, I will say. I missed it.
So we had a wonderful conversation with Miss Rose, and she was also featured. This was at the end of April. She was on as one of our science ambassadors that we interviewed as part of our Creation Station Monthly show.
Right.
And she was interviewed then for space.com. So I put a link here in the show notes to this article interview that they did with her and to our video of our Creation Station Monthly. So you can go watch this when you get a chance.
Yeah.
It's a simple, easy thing. There's also another story to cover really quickly of, you heard about the space probe thing?
Yeah.
Okay. So a couple of weeks we've covered, there's a probe that was supposed to go to Venus that didn't make it to Venus, that is back with us, and it crash landed on planet Earth earlier this week. It landed, everything's fine, everything's safe. We just don't know where it is. It's the weirdest thing. I know. You would think a big thing like this, and we've talked about it, and everybody knew what was happening.
Right.
They figured out that at least part of it broke up over Germany, and it was going south, east, and they lost all possible contact shortly thereafter. So math tells us it's in the Indian Ocean somewhere.
So it's segmented and also lost.
We don't know.
I see.
So it's somewhere in the ocean. I hate to be a conspiracy person. I am not. We are not advocating this at all. It just so coincidentally happens to be the same place where that airliner disappeared last decade. So we're going to move on to a different story, which is really cool for you because this is right up your alley. So Philips, the people who make all sorts of little electronic gizmos and stuff like that, has now released 3D printable repairing replacement parts. So if something goes wrong with it, you can come see Miss Aaliyah at the library. Because how many things do you guys do a day down there?
It varies, obviously, but mainly, I'd say estimate at least maybe 6 or so prints, depending on the size as well, too. So.
I know. Like 6 or 7 prints a day, folks, at the library for the public for free. Come on in and see us. But so it's called the Philips Fixables, and you can go and download your STL file from their company, bring it into the library or use it on your own 3D printer and print the parts that will be fixed. So now you can see like the shaving guard on this one here for the razor, that for doing your beard, etc., on stuff like that. There's some really nice little things on here. And I just thought it was a nice, fun, happy article. Like, hey, some of these companies are finally getting around to this. They're not selling these. They're giving you the print. They're not going to print it for you, but they're going to give you the file for free so you can go print it yourself.
It reminds me of at least Price Repair loss as well.
Yes.
At least nowadays, obviously, there's not much we can do for like our own like electronics, non-replaceable batteries and such. But I guess this is at least one aspect that we could get back to, sort of.
Yeah, no. See that, man. Aaliyah, you got the Segway thing down. The second show you've ever done, and you got the Segway thing down of all those electronics that are made and built and done. And yeah.
Mhm.
So in another week, this would have been our main story
Sure.
because this is a great rest of world. It's a wonderful website to go visit and see. They take local reporters, local people from the global south and everybody else to write great book, great story going on here about why Apple in this world that we live in right now with tariffs and all sorts of chaos going on economically, the technology side of it's just not easy to say no, we're not going to build something in China
Right.
because the stuff doesn't exist outside of China anymore for various reasons, and or even if it does, as in you were on like last month or something like
Mhm.
that. You and I talked about a thing for Vietnam and tennis shoes,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, mainly
Um,
like how they're trying to at least make Vietnam a bigger producer, I believe,
right.
than China,
Yeah.
or as a replacement.
And so that's one of the issues here is you can train the other people, but it's going to take you how many decades? Because,
Mhm.
and here in this article, and it goes on in detail about this, how much it has been. And they have trained 28 million workers in the last let's call it a dozen years just to be
Sure,
generous.
sure.
Um, but yeah, 28 million trainees.
We probably have to wait another dozen or so years to even
Yeah.
get to that point again with, like, say, another country.
Well, partly exactly, and that's the thing. In another country,
Mm-hmm.
because that 28 million workers that they've trained is more than the number of adult workers that are in California.
Yeah.
That's the entire state of California. So it's not happening.
Mm-mm.
So we have to come up with some methods, both politically, economically, technologically here, which is our big point here on this show is how are you going to make sure that this technology is available to everyone in all the countries so that everyone gets a smaller piece of the pie, but it's still the whole pie,
Right.
you know? So again, we could talk about this story for a long time, but we got other things to jump onto. Because this week there's another new study out about how horrible we're treating the planet. So Global Voices, another one of those great websites that you're probably not reading that covers all sorts of different stuff. These people are not just tech, they do a lot of societal stuff. One of the things I love about this site is that it's all done in the native language of wherever they're covering from.
Right.
And then you wait for it to be converted to your language. So luckily this one from the Caribbean is in
Mhm.
English, so we could share it out today because it fits our time frame. Did you know about the coral reef bleaching and stuff like that that's going
I
on in
knew
Florida?
about bleaching. I
Okay.
wasn't sure about at least this issue here, though.
So stony coral tissue loss disease is something that has been affecting the corals off the coast of Florida now for many years, closing in on
Mhm.
a decade or more.
Right.
And along with coral bleaching. So coral bleaching is a factor of heat
Mhm.
and ocean acidity. So as the warm salt water, the temperature gets higher, it
Right.
leaches color, it bleaches the actual coral because the organisms die.
Right. Mhm.
They figured out they may not all die. Some of them go into hibernation. They're trying to fix that
Sure.
at some of our local places down here. And we're going to talk about them in June during Oceans. However, stony coral tissue loss is something that takes the coral, which I know you and I don't think about coral as being very flexible in the first place,
Sure.
but it is somewhat, it moves and it is
Yes.
meant to,
It's technically an animal.
exactly.
Mhm.
See, you got this down. And it's almost like Parkinson's or
Right.
ALS for
Yes.
coral. where it stops them from actually being able to move and do what they're supposed to be doing. They get frozen in place, or they start breaking from the jerky type movements of what they're doing. So in the last decade, since this has been coming around, guess how it's been spread throughout the Caribbean?
I assume travel or just general.
See, she is so smart, folks. Cruise ships leaving Florida and going around the Caribbean have spread this disease to all sorts of other coral reefs in the Caribbean.
I think they've also, in this article, have also mentioned how deep sea divers, they encourage them to not interact or touch the coral as well, in fear of like spreading the bacteria.
Exactly. Exactly. Because it's just, so we're just going to have Aaliyah take over the show from now on, folks. You're exactly right. So you've got this disease that's in one area, and it's what happens is you suck up the water from that area in your cruise ship or in your scuba tanks or in whatever. And as your boat moves across, and for those people who are not in South Florida, it is faster to get to the Bahamas or to Cuba than it is to get to Atlanta. I mean, parts of northern Florida included. I mean, you can get to
Just
the
a few
Bahamas in like
hours.
20. Yeah.
Yeah.
Depending upon what kind of ship or flight you're on, it's
Honestly,
fast.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people just get on the little boats and go over to the Bahamas and come back in the day.
A little day trip.
And that's the problem. They have now taken the diseases from Florida and brought them over to the Bahamas and taking them down and around. And it's just crazy, because once you figure out that the coral reef is infected, it's already too late, because it only takes about a week to 2 weeks and it can just wipe out a reef once it gets infected.
Yep.
And the only way to stop it right now that they know of is to blast the coral out, to go cut the coral out of the reef and take it away and cause more damage to a reef. And it is a horrible, vicious cycle. And it's just...
Yeah.
I told you folks at the very beginning, this is not a fun show today. We got some big issues that we have to figure out a way to solve. And this one here is both a Florida problem and a Caribbean, we all have to work together problem. So let's hopefully somebody is still left in the Science Foundation to be able to tackle this. Oh, man. Okay, so there was really big news in library world that affected everybody in the United States in particular, but actually kind of around the world too this week. So last Friday, President Trump and in the White House, that administration decided to fire the Librarian of Congress, and then 2 days later decided to fire the head of the Copyright Office.
Yes.
And also, the day after that person was fired, a report came out on AI copyright that was designed to come out at that time. And the pre-release had already been given to the rest of the government, so they would know what was coming out and what this thing was all about. Luckily, there's been a little bit of pushback and stuff. But I'm going to give a quick nutshell, and then I want your opinion, Aaliyah. So they got rid of the Librarian of Congress.
One, and then
for no good reason.
No.
The reason they gave was because they didn't like the books that were in the Library of Congress.
Really?
And for people that might be checking them out, which, number one, the Library of Congress is supposed to keep track of all of the books that are published in the United States and beyond. That's what it does.
Yeah.
2, you don't get to check out books.
No.
Because it's the Library of Congress. It's not my library. I mean, it's the library for the entire United States, obviously. But it's Congress that uses that library, not the average American public.
Right.
So you're stopped Congress from getting the information they need to write laws. It's just an insane thing to do.
A major issue people have brought up is that it's more like overreach of what I believe executive, right?
Yes.
Into judicial.
Right.
So
So exactly, and there are lawsuits, and there's all these things going on.
mhm,
And yes, there's been news stories about no, the executive branch trying to put in their Doge people and being told
mhm,
no, and the librarians saying no and locking the doors and just not letting people in. And it's one of those things where you're kind of happy somebody's fighting back, but you also are like,
right.
no, that's not the right way,
Mhm,
because if you don't want the librarians in the Library of Congress deciding who gets to have access to
right.
the stuff. It's
It's just
supposed to be open to
available.
everyone.
Mhm,
And so if you don't set precedents about these things, but don't let people come in and steal the information, which is
mhm,
what they were trying to do with the Copyright Office.
right.
So the new copyright, I told you folks, you've got to go read these articles and go look at the details in the show links. In the Copyright Office report, that new report was all about whether it's legal or not to use AI and previously copyrighted works, and if you can get a copyright with AI. And the general answer was no, you
No.
cannot get an answer. You cannot get a copyright for stuff created by AI. You cannot take AI, copy a work, and spit that work back out in whole. That is
Right.
plagiarism still. That
Mhm,
is against copyright law.
mhm,
If you take the words of a document and mix them up in a training model, like
mhm,
the original first couple of training models for AI were doing, those
right.
algorithms,
Mhm,
then you can use some of that stuff. That is not stealing. That is not violating copyright of the people who posted that stuff online. But if
mhm.
you go to somebody's place that has it locked up behind a paywall and you violate the paywall or violate the terms of service for that website, then yes, it is a copyright violation, and it's complicated. And basically the answer is, are you violating copyright with AI? And the answer is maybe.
Maybe. Essentially, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we don't know yet. And it
The
has to be
question is
on a case by case basis in the courts, and you cannot shut down and fire the people in charge just because you don't like the fact that they gave a report that you didn't like.
uh, it's a lot of issues, a lot of issues that
Yeah.
mainly this area just brings up as well. I think also fair use, like obviously with training using copyrighted materials to train AI.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, at least for the general knowledge, we know at least it will sort of spit out an amalgamation of what it learns, which I don't think you could technically claim as like your own, considering
You
it's
can't.
copyrighted.
Right.
And
You can't.
yeah,
And we've covered that on this show before over the last couple of months. There have been artworks and
mm-hmm,
published works and stuff like that that have been denied copyright
mm-hmm,
because it is just AI generated
yeah,
mess.
yeah,
Or even if it's not a mess, if it's been
it's still
massaged a little
not.
bit afterwards, that's it.
Mhm. There was an argument I saw in one of the articles where I think someone was like, it's not any different from, say, any regular person studying from like a piece of copyrighted material. But I would disagree.
That's the original stuff. That's the
Hmm.
original learning models did that, and that's was good. And now they've drifted and as if this wasn't all bad enough for you folks. Here's our final story for the day. Just to make you a little bit more paranoid.
Oh,
So they now have some things have come out. Apple just announced a very nice thing today. By the way, is international. Um, excuse me. Um, sorry, I'm going to stop that thought and come back to the story here, and then we'll come back to the other thing.
okay.
Here, they've announced Apple and Android, Google for their Android operating system have both announced some very good new technology to interrupt phone calls that they think are going wrong, where
Oh,
somebody is trying to use AI voice or other ways of scamming someone to try and get you to give them bank account information or stuff like that. So
mhm.
they're making some progress on that. And that's kind of the point of this article is now if you know that they're using AI to try and scam you, but now they're using AI to stop the scam. And now how do you know which one to trust? And should you be reading this? And if somebody's doing a deep fake of your boss and telling you to get the credit cards, which is a real thing that happened last year, folks.
Yes.
And then if you're, you get to so many layers and levels and peeling back the onion step by step by step by step. So one of the ideas that this article brings up is we are soon coming to a spot where we want in-person meetings again and working in the office, because that's the only way you can trust, is if you look somebody in the eye and you can talk to the real person sitting in front of you, not over a camera, even like this. I trust you, Aaliyah. I know. I saw you down there on the desk today.
Yes.
So
yeah.
I know this is all okay. I don't know if you saw me though. Am I right? Am I the same person? You never know. Don't get paranoid like this, please.
I will say it definitely is very scary, at least because the amount of stuff you can do, essentially, like you can, I forget what the name of the model was, but you essentially could make a video just like this. You could have movements, blinking, and you could show your teeth. Maybe you can't detect all the errors you could usually find with AI, like generated models, but essentially it could still be AI. So
yeah, it's a crazy, crazy thing.
Yeah.
And I had interrupted myself earlier. Today is International Accessibility Day.
Really?
And
Wow.
so there are a lot of these tools that they're using to prevent scammers that are also meant to make things more accessible. For example, doing live translations, being able to do translations of text to speech, or the other way around, being able to do live transcripts. Translations being language to language, transcript being sound to text.
Right.
And making sure that everybody can access and do those things. So please do that. We do alt text on this show. We have closed captions automatically generated, and we tidy these up sometimes. But please go out and pay attention to those things. It's a week-long process, but today's our day that we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Do we feel okay, Aaliyah?
This
was a hard show. These are deep.
It's mainly very also ridiculous and also crazy to experience and to live in. So
yeah. Could we live in some normal times once in a while? Well, let's throw up that final slide for people. If there is a story you want to see featured, send us a smile, maybe. Creation Station at Broward.org comes right to us, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.